He looked down and recognised, in an uncomprehending flash, that it was an umbrella handle. Suddenly it was pulled hard against his lower leg, and with a simultaneous violent push in the back, Frank fell forward onto the tracks. A woman's scream and men's oaths vied with the noise of the train. Within the hour, Lenny, the newspaper seller, had given his story first to a reporter and then to the police. The next morning, as he cried out the headlines, his voice was less strident than usual. Families in Britain had become acclimatized to receiving bad news during the war, when an unexpected knock on the door might presage the dreaded telegram. With the war over, that should have been a thing of the past. Detective Sergeant Gowers of Scotland Yard and Sergeant Mansfield of A Division, who was in uniform, got out of the car on a quiet Maida Vale street at a few minutes past 10. "Worst part of the job," said Mansfield. "It is that," replied Gowers. The two men studied the prim, symmetrical house across the road. A soft glow brightened the drawn curtains of a room to the left of the front door. "It's a nice house." "Yes, it is. Well, let's get it over." The men passed through the gateway in the centre of a low privet hedge and walked up the neat stone path. They ascended the single stair and were mindful to stand back a bit from the clean doormat. Gowers reached for the knocker to give a quick, quiet tat-tat. They stood there in silence, knowing what was coming. Gowers studied his shoes. Mansfield seemed not to look at anything. A lamp was on in the hall, and light streamed through the frosted glass of the side windows and the small square pane in the door. Millicent Wright opened the door. She was wearing a well-cut grey dress and held a handkerchief in her hand. The two men saw in her face the history of her last 4 hours. They saw the first hour of irritation in which the dinner was getting spoiled, the second hour in which, to her annoyance, Frank's dinner got cold as she put the children to bed, trying to explain to them their father's inexplicable absence. The third hour, in which irritation died while she searched her mind for mention of changed arrangements or any possible reason for the lateness and for the lack of apologetic phone call. And the fourth hour of imagining the worst, expecting the worst, rehearsing all that could have gone wrong, over and over. Now the vigil ended with their knock on the door. Mrs. Wright saw the police uniform and wailed, "Oh, no! No!" The handkerchief she had in her hand went to her mouth, and tears started in her eyes. Her home and heart were broken. It should be understood that Sophie Burgoyne is first and foremost a lady. In breeding, she can trace her Norman lineage back to the Domesday Book of 1086. Before that date, the generations of her Norman forebears are lost to history. What is not lost to history is her more distressing branch of Burgoyne genealogy, in which she finds herself also related to Robert I, the first Duke of Burgundy. He had the title during the period 1032 to 1076. Robert had the vastly undernamed nickname of Tet Hardy, headstrong. It is from this branch that her family name of Burgoyne originates. However, it is also the branch with a history about which the current family would rather not reflect, because it is not exactly pleasant. Duke Robert was more than a somewhat wilful child, as his nickname suggests. He was also a murderous brigand who robbed lands and churches and took to killing anyone who got on his nerves. Had the Duke invaded another country, he might have been hailed a hero. As it was, his lack of vision made him no better than a savage bandit. As she sat at a desk in her office, Sophie was not thinking about Robert I, family trees, or skeletons in the cupboard. She never did, anyway. Sophie gave exclusive thought to the immediate problem staring her in the face. After leaving sleepy Havering-under-Lyme, Sophie had hoped to make her new business a success. Her idea was to lift herself and her father, the vicar at Havering, out of their genteel impoverishment and to secure for them both an anxiety-free future. On the desk to her left,